still with His Excellency Scot, the Ambassador, U.S. Ambassador to Indonesia, to talk about the current situation of the U.S. economy and the future cooperation with Indonesia. Now we'll discuss about the cooperation with Indonesia.
Great.
But before, I would ask to explain how is the current economy of Indonesia, your opinion?
Well, Indonesian economy has been doing quite well. Obviously grew more than 6% last year. I think most people expect it to grow about that this year. So overall, I think it's done very well. I think people are looking at some issues, like every country faces, you know, fuel subsidies and the current the trade deficit, these sorts of issues. But I think there's still great prospects for Indonesia to continue to grow well.
So can you share to the audience that how's actually the relationship between Indonesia and the U.S. since many years that we've been through?
Well, I mean, we've had a long and very good relationship with Indonesia, and both our presidents have made clear a strong commitment to make it even stronger. And that's really what we've been focused on, and not just between the governments, although that's important, but really trying to build more links between Indonesian people and American people, including in business. Part of the advantage of strong business links is not only the job creation and wealth, but you develop personal ties there that can last for a long time. So that's really what we've been focused on. I think the relationship is very good. We're very pleased with it, but we're not satisfied. We think we can make it even closer.
It should find another stage of the relationship, right?
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunities. We're the world's second and third largest democracies. We have a lot in common, a lot of challenges in the world and the region where we can work together in ways that benefit both Indonesian people, American people, and hopefully the region as a whole.
Indonesian economy grows very well for about 6.3% last year. So do you see that the Indonesia economy that is driven by domestic consumption is a good idea to every country to be learned?
Well, every country is different. I think certainly Indonesia has benefited from strong consumption, as you said. Also, commodity prices up until recently were very high. That helped Indonesia a lot. So I think Indonesia has done very well. The challenge is, not just for Indonesia, how do you keep it going? It's not automatic that it just stays this way. And so my view is that Indonesia has an opportunity to really keep growing at a rapid level if it can continue to attract investment.
Talking about the investment, do you see that the current economic situation, the political situation of Indonesia with minimum wage issues, security, also safe for the investment climate and the investors to come to Indonesia?
Yeah, I mean, I think it certainly is safe for investors and other people to come to Indonesia. I think, you know, investors, whether they're Indonesians, Americans, or from another country, they want to go someplace where they think they can make money and where they're confident for long term. And I think, you know, both in the United States and Indonesia, we can both find ways to make ourselves more attractive. So it's not just for Indonesia, but I think for both countries.
So it's normal what happened in this country. Now, talking about the global crisis also affecting every country, what about the relationship between the U.S. and Indonesia, also affected by the global crisis or maybe getting more powerful?
Well, I think actually the global crisis has eased a lot, and I think we're now in a pretty positive global situation. There's always problems, of course, but I think what we find is there's a lot of opportunities to work together, as I mentioned, in business and economics, but on environmental issues, trying to help solve regional security or diplomatic problems, make sure that everything gets resolved peacefully through dialogue, and we're working really well with Indonesia on that front. So, as I said, I think the cooperation's increasing very nicely.
This is interesting when you mentioned about the other cooperation beside economy and political. How is it the cross-cultural understanding that Indonesian people love the United States? People love doing American dreams. How do you see this about this phenomenon in Indonesia?
Well, thank you for saying that. You know, I think what's interesting to me is a lot of Americans up until recently didn't know very much about Indonesia. A lot of Indonesians, in my experience, have some idea about the United States, but sometimes also some misperceptions. What we find is that when we bring people together, Americans and Indonesians together, they like each other.
Yeah.
And they find there's a lot in common. And so really our job is to bring more people together, and then they'll on their own, they will find ways to work together.
Now, again, talking about the business, because the memorandum of understanding has been done by the visit of Jose Fernandez last year. How's the follow-up, the progress of the MOU on infrastructure projects and everything?
It's good. We're working every day to try to bring more American companies here to see where there are opportunities for them to contribute as Indonesia continues to build its infrastructure. So working together in rail and airports and energy. I mean, it's not always easy. It takes a little bit of time and patience, but I think we're making steady progress, and so I'm very hopeful.
Okay, how's the other cooperation and how's the follow-up after this one? We got one more segment, Ambassador. We'll be right back after this one with Ambassador Scot Marciel. Now this is the last segment of our discussion with Ambassador Scot Marciel, the U.S. Ambassador to Indonesia, to discuss about the current situation of U.S. economy and also the future cooperation with Indonesia. Last segment, but that's okay. I think we should wrap it up and go conclude things with the cooperation in Indonesia and the U.S.
Sure.
After the MOU on infrastructure project, so what need to be followed up after this in 2013 about the projects in Indonesia?
Lots of things. We're following up, as I mentioned, on energy, including things like geothermal energy. We're doing a lot of work on airports, rail transportation. So many areas of cooperation, plus so many other companies. One interesting thing that we're just about to launch jointly together is the Millennium Challenge Corporation Compact.
What is that? Could you please share?
Well, it's a program from the United States government where we will be providing $600 million over 5 years in grants. It's not loans. It's all grants. But it's administered by Indonesians, and it's going to focus in 3 areas, all to promote economic growth.
Okay, what is that?
It's going to focus on improved procurement by the government, include improved methods of buying things, more transparency.
Okay.
Another one is going to be a nutrition program to help, particularly in poor areas, to help make sure kids get enough nourishment so that they can participate actively in school and be very healthy. And a third part of it is what we call green prosperity, which is going to be doing a lot of work in renewable energy and other things to promote economic growth in rural areas, but also while protecting the environment.
Very, very interesting.
So we're just launching that this month.
This month?
This
okay,
month,
we'll be waiting for that. You mentioned about the energy boom. Is it well connected with the third point of the program to the energy boom and the cooperation with Indonesia's energy situation?
Yeah, I mean, energy, Indonesia certainly needs more power. And at the same time, President Yudhoyono's made this commitment to reduce greenhouse gases. So there's a need both for more energy production, but also more efficient energy production, cleaner energy production. And this is mostly going to be done by Indonesia. But I think where the U.S. can help is in some areas our companies have, if I can say, maybe the world's best technology in areas like geothermal and energy efficiency and oil and more traditional oil and gas. So there's a natural opportunity to be partners where hopefully it produces more energy for Indonesia, cleaner energy for Indonesia, and U.S. and Indonesian companies can partner together.
I also pointed the second program about nutrition to the poor people, and also connected to this food self-sufficiency program in Indonesia, because food crisis, commodity crisis always happening in Indonesia. How do you see this about this opportunity to be grabbed in 2013?
Well, let me be a little bit more controversial.
Okay, please.
My view is food security doesn't have to mean food self-sufficiency. No country in the world produces all its own food. We produce huge amounts of food, but we still import lots because there's some things we're not very good at importing. So I hope as we continue the discussion with Indonesia about food security that we can get to a situation where we don't say our country or Indonesia has to produce everything because to be honest it's not very realistic. And I think the idea of Indonesia producing more food would be great for the whole world, and we'd love to work with Indonesia on that. But trade between, so the Indonesia's exporting food to the U.S., we're exporting food to Indonesia, I think can contribute to food security, and I hope people will talk more about that.
So food security is more important than as good as the right concept than the food self-sufficiency for a country.
That's my view, yes.
Now, is it also well connected that last year also pointed about the agriculture biotechnology also in the agenda of the investment corporation. So how do you see this about this sector?
Well, I think, you know, one of the keys to growing more food and actually helping farmers do better is to make sure that they can increase their production. So that with 10 hectares or 20 hectares or however much they have, they can grow more food. And there's lots of different things to do, but one way is to make sure that they have the best seeds. Sometimes that's a hybrid seed, sometimes it's through biotechnology. But the truth is, the science shows you can increase food production a lot with that good technology seeds.
Okay. So how is our small medium enterprises growing in Indonesia as the stabilizer of the Indonesia economy?
Well, you know, I think in both our countries, small and medium-sized enterprises are really the key to success. No offense to the big companies, because they're also important. But in Indonesia, it's a very dynamic sector. And I think one of the things I'm very pleased is that we've been able to make a small contribution by having programs for entrepreneurs and also partnering with Indonesian banks to provide financing to help the small, particularly the small companies or the startup companies, get access to money so they can grow. So I think it's a very exciting sector.
Well, there's a plan that will expand the investment to Indonesia. What's next?
Well, you know, for us, the U.S. government will do all we can to encourage our companies to come here. But in the end, our companies are very independent. They don't really do what we tell them. And we think the economies are more efficient if we let the companies make those decisions. But as much as possible, we encourage them to come here and encourage the government to create good conditions so that not only Americans but Indonesians and others invest here and create jobs and wealth.
Now, can you share your hope and prediction towards U.S. and Indonesia future cooperation?
Well, my hope and my expectation is that we will continue to build a closer and stronger relationship, and we really want to focus on the people-to-people part, which is part of the reason we've worked really hard to make our visa process much easier and much faster, because we want a lot more Indonesians to go to America and a lot more Americans to come here. People to people. That's what really matters.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for your time. Thank you so much for coming in this Revenews International program. There was Ambassador Scot Marciel to talk about the current situation of the U.S. economy and the future cooperation with Indonesia. Don't get anywhere, we will have another information and business update in Revenews International.